All right, so we're going to be in Daniel 12 today. Now, last week we talked about, hey, come on in. Last week, just getting started, we walked through the prophecy and the fulfillments of chapter 11. Now, a lot of it was about the Egyptian and Syrian wars back and forth. So remember, we talked very, very specifically and walked through a lot of history in those 40-some verses about how God had given Daniel this vision of the kings of the south and the kings of the north, and how they would fight over the Holy Land. Okay, so these were 2 of 4 kingdoms, but the reason why the prophecy focused around them is because Israel kind of traded hands back and forth for about 375 years. They were the pawn in this political game, and they went back and forth and back and forth. So Daniel 12 kind of continues on, but we're moving from that historical point to end times. And so it kind of telescopes, if you will, to the bigger picture. So we went really specific through history, and at the end of chapter 11, we kind of saw how it was starting to grow to the general end times. Chapter 12 covers that more specific end time. Okay? So it's going to cover the end of history, it's going to cover the final resurrection and the final judgment. Okay? So let's start in verse 1 of chapter 12. So this is still the angel talking to Daniel, and he says, "At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince, who has charge for your people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as has never been seen, that there was a nation till that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book." Okay? So this unnamed angel talks about a time in which the end will happen and Michael takes center stage. Okay? Now we learned a little bit about Michael earlier in the book, and he is a very, very powerful angel. And we were told that he is assigned to Israel as their chief guardian. That's where we kind of get the idea of a guardian angel, that God tells us that certain countries have angels assigned to them. Okay, so Michael is the archangel assigned to Israel. So this angel tells Daniel that Michael is going to arise because it is going to be a time of trouble for Israel, for God's people. Okay, so we discover here that Michael is the opposite of Satan. Now, a lot of people think that Satan and Jesus are on the same level. They're not, okay? Because God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit are up here, and then the angels, remember, Satan was Lucifer, he was an angel, okay? So Michael and Satan are opposites, are counterparts to each other, not Jesus, okay? So in addition to his role as a spiritual warrior, Michael has the job of protecting Israel, okay? Now, this time that we are telescoping to the end is going to talk about the final persecution for the people of Israel. It's going to be the world calamity that we know as the Great Tribulation. This is going to be a time unlike nothing has ever seen. That's what verse 1 tells us, that no nation has seen what this is going to be like. Okay? Now, we know that the Jewish people have a lot of trouble in their history. Okay? We have the fall of Jerusalem that we talked about at the beginning of Daniel, how it fell 3 times. We talked about Antiochus, number 4, and his terror on Jerusalem. The Romans are getting ready to destroy Jerusalem in our time period. We've also had the persecution in the Dark Ages, the persecution of the 20th century during the Holocaust, and the recent attacks that we have seen. So it seems like Israel's history has just been one war after another, and time of trouble upon time of trouble, okay? But what we're told here is that the worst is yet to come, okay? They have not seen the worst yet. And Jesus actually quotes Daniel in Matthew 24, okay? And he tells them, you haven't seen anything yet, okay? Now remember, they've seen some stuff. They've seen the Maccabee Revolution. They've seen Antiochus take their temple down. And Jesus tells them it's not done yet, okay? Revelation 12 tells us what is going to make this so terrible. This is going to be a time of absolute fury by Satan towards the people of God, okay? The trumpets, the seals, the bowls, all of that in Revelation is Satan's attack on God's people. It's absolutely horrific conditions if you've read Revelation and studied it, okay? The Jewish people just become this target, okay? of the devil, the Antichrist, absolutely everything just turns towards them. But despite all of that, deliverance is assured. No matter how great the attack on God's people is going to be, God promises to preserve them, he promises to be with them, and he promises that he's going to get the victory at the end of it. Okay? And what it tells us here in verse 1 is that not every Jewish person and not every person is going to get that deliverance. It says only everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. Okay? So that is then explained in Revelation what those books are. Okay? But we're told here that everyone whose name shall be found written in the book of life, those are the people who will be delivered. All right, let's move on to verse 2. It says, and many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Okay? Now, a lot of people want to cut this verse out of the Bible, and that was very true at the time of Jesus as well. Okay? This refers to the resurrection of the body. Okay? That sleep is their nice way of saying you're dead. Okay? The Jewish people didn't like to say people are dead because it's so final. They just believed that they kind of fell asleep. It was a nice way to say it, like a euphemism to say it nicely. Okay? So it teaches us that there's going to be a bodily resurrection, and you only have two destinations. Okay? Either you're going to wake up and you're going to go to everlasting life, or you're going to wake up and you're going to go to everlasting contempt. And that's it. That's the only choice. Okay? There's no middle ground. There's no happy medium waiting room. Okay? Everlasting life or everlasting contempt. And we're also told that the contempt is everlasting, as equally as the everlasting life is. Okay? The absolute horror and terror of hell does not end. Okay? There was this time period where people wanted to believe, because hell was so hard to wrap your mind around that it was eternal, that there was just like, well, they'll just be punished for a little while, and eventually God will just like throw them into a lake of fire, and they'll just, be erased. They had their punishment, and it's just going to be erased. But we know from here that that's not true. Logically, if everlasting life is eternal, you wouldn't want that to end, right? You wouldn't want only to have a temporary everlasting life with God. Hell then must be everlasting, okay? Because if they do not have a payment for their sin, they will never have a payment for their sin, okay? Their sin is always going to be unpaid for all of eternity, okay? The principles behind the Old Testament sacrifice showed us that there was this imperfect payment, that they continually had to bring all of those animals every single time, every single year, every single day. Every time you did something wrong, you had to bring another animal, because it was imperfect until Christ came along, okay? So if you die and go to hell, you're going to be there for forever, unfortunately. That is a very serious thing that we need to wrap our minds around and understand the everlastingness of hell. It is real and it is everlasting. Okay? Verse 3 says, and those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Okay? So after we're told that you either have the decision of life or death, we're told that those who will speak of this righteousness, who will share the wisdom of that, will shine. Cannot say that word today. Okay? So despite what is coming, we have the opportunity to shine. We have the opportunity to be light. We have the opportunity to explain righteousness. We have the opportunity to shine for God. Okay? So the brightness of God's wise one will turn many towards righteousness. Now, if you read the book of Maccabees, if you read Revelation, we see witnesses. We see people stepping up and sacrificing themselves to tell of God's goodness and stay on God's side, okay? And God looks at that and counts those people as stars among the darkness. They are pinpoints of light that are shining against the darkness, okay? So, we are told that that is everlasting. God says that they shine like stars forever and ever. So it doesn't fade. And that is what we need to put our efforts into, the things that are not going to fade. Okay? All right, so verse 4, the angel tells Daniel, "But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." Okay? So this is the angel telling Daniel, I want you to shut up the words, meaning to keep them safe. Okay? So he tells Daniel, instructs Daniel to write all of this down, and he wants him to make sure that he protects this word, because it is going to endure. And it is incredible that we have Daniel, remember he's standing on the banks of the river receiving this orally, he's hearing this, and the angel tells him to record it and to preserve it, okay? To keep it safe until the end. Now, sealing up the book, remember we talked about before how it has this double meaning. It is authenticating it. When you put a seal on something and you put your insignia on it, it shows that it was from you, okay? And it was also a preservation, because then you would take that sealed rolled document and you would put it somewhere safe, okay? And no one else could change anything on there, because if you broke the seal, everyone would know that the seal was broken. So that means something in it was changed, okay? So seal the book and keep it safe. All right, now Daniel's prophecy was valuable to Daniel, because Daniel was going to get to know what happened to God's people, and God's people were going to get to know what happened to God's people and be able to put their trust in God. And the angel was telling him it was also going to be beneficial for a day that was to come, okay? So that is for us and for those who will come after us. We get to sit here and study Daniel's words and hear what the angel told Daniel, and it should help us understand what we're supposed to do. Just like Daniel found out what he was supposed to do, we get that as well, okay? And then one of my favorite verses here says, "Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." What does that sound like? That sounds like us. We can, every one of us, get on a plane and go around the world. We have Miss Lauren, who's on a plane right now going to Mexico, right? We can go to and fro. And then how many of us have the whole world in our back pocket? We can Google anything. We can know anything, right? Okay? That didn't happen in Daniel's time. Daniel couldn't get on a plane and go somewhere. Daniel couldn't just look up something on Google, okay? So this is showing Daniel what's coming, okay? People can go anywhere. They have knowledge at their fingertips, okay? The angel was telling Daniel that this would be a sign of what was coming, okay? All right. So then we have Daniel's response to this in verse 5. "Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others stood, one on this bank of the stream, and one on that bank of the stream. And someone said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream, 'How long shall it be till the end of the wonders?' And I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream, he raised his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and swore by him who lives forever, that it would be for a time, times, and half a time, and that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things would be finished." Okay? So, back in chapter 10, we find out where Daniel is. He's standing on the banks of the waters, okay? And he sees this angel, this very powerful angel that's kind of floating above the river, okay? And the angel starts talking to him and telling him what's happening, okay? From that point in chapter 10 until now is this whole vision that he receives. So it's one long vision. And then when he comes back, he sees these other two men standing there, one on each side of the river. Now we assume that these are angels, and they're having a conversation with each other. And they're asking questions out loud. How long is this going to be, right? Because they've seen the same vision of Daniel. They've seen what's coming, and their question is, how long, okay? Right? Because when we see this, our question is going to be the same, right? How long? Every time we read Revelation, we're like, God, how long are you going to let that happen? When is that coming, right? We have all the same questions. So the angel gives an oath, okay? And he raises his right hand and he raises his left hand. And he swears by God, okay? So this is a solemn oath that the time would only last 3.5 years. A time times and half a time is 3.5 years. Okay? So he is telling Daniel what's going to happen and how bad it is, right? But he says there's a time limit on it. Mark it down. It's only going to be 3.5 years. Now, we know this 3.5 period very well because we've studied Revelation, okay? Daniel 7:25 tells us that during this period, the saints are given over to the hands of the Antichrist. Daniel 9:27 tells us that this is the period between the breaking of the Antichrist's covenant with Israel, the erection of the abomination of the desolation, and the establishment of Jesus' kingdom. Okay, there's this time period of events that happen. Daniel 12:7 here describes it as a duration of the time of trouble for Israel. Okay, so this is how Daniel describes it, and then we have parallel verses in Revelation. Revelation 11:2 describes it that the holy city will be tread underfoot by Gentiles. Okay, so Gentiles will invade the holy city. 11:3 describes it as the ministry period of the two witnesses. Okay? Revelation 12:6 and 14 describe it as a period that Israel is preserved by God in the wilderness. Okay, because the holy city gets trampled on, they get evicted again. Okay, they flee to the wilderness, but God preserves them in the wilderness again, as He did in Exodus. And then Revelation 13:5 describes it as the duration of the Antichrist rule, persecution, and blasphemy. Okay, remember, he is going to blaspheme God and set himself up as God and ruler of the world, but he only gets 3.5 years. Okay, 3.5 years. He should have run for president. He gets 4. He only gets 3.5. All right, so this tells us that the people of Israel seem to be completely crushed by what is going on during these end times. But the Messiah is going to return at the end of it. Okay? All right, so verse 8 says, I heard, but I didn't understand. Us too, Daniel. Us too, right? I heard, but I didn't understand. And then I said, oh my Lord, what shall be the outcome of these things? Okay? So Daniel's receiving all of this firsthand. He's hearing it. He's seeing everything. And at the end of it, he goes, I don't understand. Okay? I don't understand. I don't understand these things. So he asks the angel, what is going to be the outcome of these things? At the end of it, what is going to be the end result of all of this? Okay? So verse 9, the angel tells him, he said, go your way, Daniel. Okay? For the words are shut up and sealed until the end of the time. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined. But the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But those who are wise shall understand. And from that time that the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1,335th day. But go your way till the end, and you shall rest, and you shall stand in your allotted place at the end of days. Okay, so Daniel is very confused about what he sees and what he hears. So he asks, what is the end of all of this? I've seen all of these wars and desolations and our people crushed. What is going to be the result of all of this? What is going to be the end of all of this? Okay, and the angel tells him, go your way. It literally means to go. Okay, so he tells Daniel, this is it. This is all you're getting. Okay? What you have seen and what you have heard is it for you. Now remember, Daniel's like 82, 83 at this point. Okay? He's seen and done a lot. But the angel tells him this is all that you are getting. God will reveal later more. Okay? He revealed to John in Revelation more, but he tells Daniel, this is enough. This is all that you're getting. Okay? And you have to be content with that. You have to be okay with what we've already shown you. Okay? So the angel tells Daniel that many are going to purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined. Now we know what this is, right? Mm-hmm. We see Jesus. Mm-hmm. We see the ultimate sacrifice, the ultimate payment that will be made so that we can be white and purified. Okay? So it is this messianic promise that he is giving Daniel. Because remember, he asked the angel, what about the end? Okay, this is the end. You will be purified white. Okay? And I love this, but he says, but the wicked shall act wickedly. Okay? So if you ever want to know why somebody does something, the wicked's going to act wickedly. It's in their nature to do so. Okay? More specifically, this is going to be the end times, and when Satan reigns, people are going to be allowed to do whatever they want to do. Humans are going to do what they do. Okay? There's going to be no restrictions on what they're going to be allowed to do. Okay? So sin is going to reign more than we have ever seen it reign. Okay? The Antichrist is going to set up his government and his laws and his rules, and we are going to probably not be shocked by a lot of things humans are going to do. Okay? But we see in Revelation 7 that there is going to be an innumerable amount in heaven who are going to be saved. Okay? And then he gives them this amazingly specific prophecy. Okay? It deals with numbers. The angel says, from the time of the abomination of desolation, so that's when the Antichrist sets up his statue, his throne, whatever he's going to do, okay? From the time that that happens, we can just start marking off the calendar, okay? To the final consummation of things is 1,290 days, okay? So, it says, but blessed is he who arrives at the 1,335th day. So we see that there's going to be a little bit of time in between. All right, let's talk numbers. All right, so we know that the tribulation is technically going to be broken up into 7 years, right? And we have this midpoint in between 3.5 years and 3.5 years. Okay, so there is peace marked by this time, all right, and war marked by the second time, okay, because this is when the Antichrist is going to break the treaty, okay. He sets it up for peace. This is a false peace that they get promised, and then he is the one who ends up breaking his own promise, his own treaty, okay. So at the midpoint of the tribulation, okay, the Antichrist breaks the treaty with Israel, he desecrates their temple, and he begins to persecute the Jews, okay? So for 1,260 days is the all-out persecution. This is the majority of Revelation happens in this time period right here, okay? So 1,260 days. So at the end of the tribulation, this is when Messiah returns. Okay? This is the culmination of that 1,260 days. And Jesus talks a little bit more about this in Matthew 24. Okay? During the next 30 days, Daniel tells us that there is going to be restoration. Okay? So that's leading up to day 1,290. So this is 30 days of restoration that are going to happen. Do we know what's going to happen? No, I have no idea. We're not told. Okay, but Daniel tells us that there's restoration that's going to happen. And then there's going to be another 45 days in which the angel told him the people who are going to be most blessed are those who are going to arrive at this date, 1,335. Okay? So we kind of assume, if we take Jesus' words in Matthew 24 and 25, that this is where the judgment is going to happen. This is going to be the difference between the lamb and the goats, what we have done with our time. This is probably where the judgment is going to happen for 45 days, okay? And then, after the 1,335 day, then we get the 1,000-year reign, okay? And this is where Messiah sits, enthroned, okay, for 1,000 years. Because that was the promise to the people of Israel, that they would have Messiah for 1,000 years. So that promise has to come, all right? So Daniel is given this timeline. And the angel says, you can start marking off your calendar. When this happens, you can start marking off your calendar of exactly what's going to happen, okay? Because he asked the angel, what is the result? What is the end? He's seen a sneak preview of all of this. And he says, yeah, but what's going to happen after, right? What comes afterward? What's going to be the result of all of this? And the angel tells him there's going to be a period of restoration, there's going to be a period of judgment, and there's going to be a period of peace. This is going to be marked by peace. Okay? So, at the end of all of this revelation and vision, the angel tells him in verse 13, but go your way till the end, and you shall rest, and you shall stand in your allotted place at the end of days. So the angel tells Daniel that there's a place waiting for Daniel. Remember, Daniel's in his 80s. He has lived a long, long life. And the angel says, Daniel, there's a place waiting for you where you are going to stand. Okay? In Revelation 19:1, John tells us, after this, I heard what seemed to be the loud voice of a great multitude in heaven. And Daniel's voice was among that multitude. Okay? Daniel got his rest. At some point after this, he passes away. He goes to sleep. In the Hebrew, he dies. Okay? We don't have a problem saying that. He dies. But then he stands in his allotted place in heaven, before the throne, before the Ancient of Days that he saw. Okay? Before the Son of Man that he saw. And all of these horrific visions that he saw. And now he is standing in that multitude, adding his voice to the choir in heaven. Okay? So the angel told him, Daniel, that's what the end result is going to be. Okay? As horrific as all of this is, as all of these visions that you have seen, and what is going to happen to Israel, the end of it is you are going to stand before your God in the middle of that multitude. Okay? That is the end result of all of this. But for now, I need you to go your way. Okay? He's basically telling him, I'm not going to answer any more questions. You need to seal up the book. You need to do what you were told. You need to go your way. Go back to doing what you were supposed to be doing, and you're going to stand in your allotted place when the time comes. Okay? So God, through Daniel, has given us so many visions, so many stories, but he doesn't tell Daniel everything. So we don't get everything sometimes, because even Daniel in the middle of it says, I don't understand all of this, right? And we read this and go, we don't understand it either, Daniel. As much as to and froing and we are going, and as much knowledge as we have, we still don't understand it all, okay? And Daniel was just one guy, all right? So Daniel had to complete his race. He had to finish what God started in him, and then it was time for him to rest, okay? All right, so to wrap up Daniel, remember, Daniel started out as a 17-year-old boy. He was ripped away from his homeland. He was forced into a foreign land to serve as a slave to an absolute tyrant. Remember, everybody was afraid of Nebuchadnezzar. He befriends King Nebuchadnezzar and faithfully serves him for over 40 years. He rises to the importance of ranks in the palace. He interpreted 2 of King Nebuchadnezzar's vision dreams. He saw the fall and restoration of that strong-willed king. He semi-retires under King Belshazzar. Remember, he's not too pleased when King Belshazzar takes over, so he kind of semi-retires. And he ends up watching the fall of Babylon, who falls to the Persian ruler, Cyrus the Great, okay, through the handwriting on the wall. He didn't bow to idols. He escaped the trap of his enemies and of the mouths of the lions. He prayed. He humbled himself. He's received several visions through the mouths of angels. He caught glimpses of beasts and the Ancient of Days and the Son of Man and the other side and the future to come for God's people. Okay? But always remember that it was Daniel's humility, his faith, and his courage that let him see all of that. Okay? He was the open door for God to speak and to act in his life. Okay?